local meetup. I was about to swear that I forgot we were live, but fantastic. Brilliant, that's exactly what we want to see. We want people coming out every single time. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to give a bit of an origin story for LinkedIn Local. The LinkedIn meetup started back in 2016. There was kind of 4 co-founders for it, including me. It was all a volunteer-based organization. I hosted my first meetup in New York at Washington Square Park. Only 4 people came. It was the best meetup of all time. And I just started rating though too, which was not ideal. We all went to the Starbucks after and enjoyed that. But we started to do meetups everywhere in the world. Basically, any place I was, whether it was Mumbai, Shanghai, Paris, back here in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Calgary, Vancouver, we'd throw a meetup and try to get hosts to come out and support it, and obviously try to get audience members to come out and support the events every single month. The goal of these meetups is not just about networking, it's to also focus on important themes, things that we all maybe think about on a daily basis, but we haven't really delved really deep into them. So I am very excited about LinkedIn Local. A little bit of background on me. I run a tech company here in Toronto called Surf. We were actually out of 111 2 years ago and then graduated through 111, which is great. But we built a company very much around compensating people for their data. So the data you share to Google or Facebook that you don't get any money back for, we're the ones that come in and help you monetize that data. I'm also a big Formula 1 fan, so if anybody wants to talk to me after about Formula 1, please do come up and talk to me about that. That being said, my co-host for this event is Umar. Can everyone give him a round of applause? DYPD team, Discover Your Personal Brand, have been instrumental in us being able to put on 23 meetups here in Toronto. The work that they do, by the way, is entirely volunteer-based again. They do it because they genuinely enjoy these events. They enjoy cultivating community, meeting new people like yourself. So again, just a big, big thank you to Bobby, to Ramit, and the whole DYPD team for doing such a great job with hosting these events in Toronto every 3 months. So round of applause again for that. Oh, that was a beautiful moment. That was our first Toronto LinkedIn meetup, and we did that at the DMZ. I think Bobby was a bit shorter, but I don't know, he's growing. I don't know, Bobby. Anyways, today we have a really awesome kind of programming built in. We're going to start off with our panel. The panel that's very much around ChatGPT, but even broader, just around AI. We have some pretty awesome panelists that are on it. And then beyond the panel, we're going to do an amazing icebreaker. Which is going to be led by Bobby. He's going to get everyone talking to each other, but hopefully not to someone you know. And then we're going to go into the open mic session. And the open mic session generally is my favorite part normally at these events. We just encourage anybody to come up to the front and for 30 seconds, just share anything you want. It could legitimately be a plug for your business. You can just come up and be like, here's my product, please buy it at 𝐋𝐲𝐳.com. It could be, I'm looking for a job. I've had a really tough month and I'd like to just share a little bit about it to see if anybody else can resonate with me. Go in any direction you want, but again, we will stop you after 30 seconds. So that is the only caveat there. But the open mic session and then kind of back to networking, open networking, grab water, grab coffee, whatever you need to. I think we're kind of going to shut this place down around 8:39. So yeah, that's going to be our mandate. But any questions before we start? Bathrooms, by the way, you go out this way, you go to the right. Feel free to use the bathroom at any time. That is 24/7. Okay, it's not. That also closes at 9 p.m. So don't lock yourself in there. But otherwise, I think we're good to go. Bobby, I'll introduce you as our moderator for the panel, and we'll go from there. Check. Hey, all right. Can I get the panelists up here too? Just switch up in there. Okay, we got the CATHARINE and Awesome here. Another thing to mention too is that as this is live stream right now on the UIP page, but if you want to take video, if you want to take photos, if you want to tag us, and you can tag join search, you tag UIP, you tag the speaker, or search for us, and you know you can hashtag LinkedIn Local, hashtag LinkedIn Local CO. You can post on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then LinkedIn, TikTok away. I don't know if that's there yet, but I'm working on it. But yeah, we'd love to have you be just share away. All right, so let's start off with our panels. Actually, we'll start with introductions. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. I'll give the mic. So we'll just put Introduce yourself, please.
Hi there. How's everyone's night? Yeah? Alright, good stuff. I'm trying to get. How are you guys doing here all night, guys? Bobby and Switch for hosting the event. My name is ASIM. I'm a digital adoption specialist focused on helping people with new technologies. I work with a number of businesses through the Business Development Bank of Canada. I help entrepreneurs to integrate their business strategies through the adoption of technologies. Catherine, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm CATHARINE FENNEL. I am CEO and founder of 𝐑VideoBio. And 𝐑VideoBio is a software as a service platform for talent assessment using AI, video, audio, various other digital forms of interviews and tests that are used in the hiring process to make recruiters' lives much more efficient. I am also a massive F1 fan, and I'm really excited about AI. I was saying to my daughter that I can actually talk about AI here and geek out a little bit, and someone's going to listen to me, so I'm happy to be on the panel.
Awesome. And I guess my introduction to my name is Umar. I'm a motivational speaker and personal trainer. I've been for about 18 years. Over the last 18 years, I've traveled around the world to 1,000 keynotes and workshops across 4 continents and 5 times TEDx speaker. And what I really focus on helping people get clarity in personal brand, and I help them build a thought leadership brand through speaking, storytelling, confidence, mindset, digital presence, and building the So let's get right into this. And I also have some thoughts on AI and ChatGPT, but I want to get the panel going. We'll start with the first one. This one's directed to you, Austin. What does the term generative AI mean? And can you talk a bit about the types or categories?
So when we talk about ChatGPT, we're talking about a specific kind of AI. We're talking about generative AI. And so what that's all about is, with ChatGPT in particular, we're taking text, we're talking to the computer, we're talking to the system via text, and we're transforming the data that we put into something else, so that it transforms into other text, it can transform into images, it can transform into sounds. So this is a really hot topic, so I know you guys, you've seen maybe the videos of people writing songs. There was this one thing that blew up with, with Drake and The Weeknd, and the song was put out, and a lot of people were talking about how is it that we start off with this text font, now this is competing with the original artist. So it's interesting, you see things like the AI portraits, so for AI images, you can describe something via text, and then it gets translated into images. And it's having a profound effect on the industry, on creatives. Right now, people are considered as a threat, but perhaps it opens up new doors.
Anyone else want to add anything? Or? That was pretty good. Let's go to the next question. That lots of questions here. Again, you guys have questions, see if you totally can. I'm going to start off by talking about my own personal experience. So, AI, and this is kind of a fun thing that we want to do, which is, if you think about AI in movies, they always talk about the rise of machines and how they're going to take over the world. And, I, for one, am happy to accept our overlords if they do take over. And I just want to make sure if you're listening that that's what's happening. But if you want, we have a little fun little thing here. If you can think of 10 different instances in sci-fi movies or TV series where AI is used, positive or negative, put it out there, just tweet out there or put it on Instagram and tag us, because I'm curious what you guys think of that. We'll talk about that a little later. But my experience with ChatGPT when I first saw it, when it first came out, I started dabbling with it. And I didn't explore it too much, but now I am fully into this thing. In two ways. One is, I'm a video back speaker. I don't like to, I do newsletter, I do content, but it's a longer process. So I decided to write a newsletter. Those are my kids. I want to talk about, because they would ask me, Daddy, what's in a cell phone? I said, fine, show me the research that it's okay. And they haven't done that yet. So I put together an article on all the pros and cons of smartphone usage for kids. And I got ChatGPT to do research. Oh my God, it was amazing. I got all this stuff. It's not with the good stuff too. Like, kids get smartphones, whatever. But I talk about the bad things, with the research, and this is going to be my next newsletter on LinkedIn. So I'm super excited about that.
second thing I found was a new tool called 𝐻𝐸𝐽, and what it does is, I do a lot of live streams, social audio rooms, and things like that. It was able to take all my replays, all my content, summarize the entire thing, come up with a whole bunch of titles, put together a Twitter thread, put together a newsletter, put together a timestamp, quotables for everybody that's in the room. It was amazing. In 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, it was incredible. I'm going to be able to use it for all my live streams, all my audio rooms. So I do love that. Which that's the next question, which is, what are some effective ways that businesses can leverage generative AI solutions? And do you have any favorite tools in this domain?
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to search in particular, we actually try to stay away from the buzzword AI now for about 4 or 5 years, but I think we actually always had components within our analytics platform, how we take millions upon millions of data points and we filter all the data points from users to provide insights to companies that can just put in a simple question. And for example, like, what are the top TV shows that 18 to 24-year-old females in New York watch in October 2022? And compare that to May of 2023. And you can immediately get an answer that's not only visual, but you can also get an answer that's numeric. So being able to get through that entire data set does require a substantial amount of modeling. And that's something that I know ChatGPT does in the background that we typically don't see. One of my favorite tools actually happens to be AutoGPT. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried AutoGPT out, but the difference mainly between AutoGPT and ChatGPT is AutoGPT doesn't require human prompts. So it has an AI agent that goes in and does the task for you. It does not need any sort of prompting beyond you giving it the initial task. So if I, for example, want to say, how do I take a rocket from Fort Lauderdale and transport it to Calgary, Alberta, which by the way is impossible, but it's not because of that, it's Calgary. But that actually could be something that you assign in AutoGPT. It'll give you the instructions on what you need to do, and then it'll actually go and do it, whether it's setting up the meetings, whether it's kind of going and calling and emailing, for example, a shipping provider and getting an estimate of how much it would cost. It will do the work for you. So it's almost like having a human assistant in your pocket that is actively doing work for you. And it's very cool because it's actually one of the first forms of AGI, which is kind of stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which is the type of AI that is on par with human intelligence. So it does not surpass human intelligence, but it's on par with what we are able to do on a daily basis. That's something that is probably my favorite tool because imagine you set up a party in Toronto, you could put that in ChatGPT and get general instructions. But for me to send emails out, book a calendar invite, like go and email restaurants and places, you can get AutoGPT to be able to do all of that without you having to touch anything past the initial task. So that's something that I think is pretty fascinating.
So we deal with candidates for job seekers, we deal with the companies that hire them, and we deal with universities for student preparation for interviews. So the context, let me just give you the ChatGPT use cases there, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the recruiting workflow AI use case. So first of all, if you're a job seeker, and you guys probably don't know this if you played with ChatGPT, you know how to take a job description, take your resume, run a comparison, improve on your resume, perhaps write a cover letter, start sourcing answers to the top 5 most likely questions you're going to get in a first stage interview, etc. But you also know that you need to be careful with that from a plagiarism standpoint. So if you take an answer right out of ChatGPT and you put it into a resume or into one of these other content formats I just mentioned, you could get into trouble. So the trick there is that you need to put it into a content check tool first, and you just Google it, and any number of them will come up. Say, check my content, and it'll tell them how much plagiarism exists from a ChatGPT copy and paste format. Then
What's a good percentage? Either 1%.
Yeah, exactly. So then you go to something like Jasper.ai and you put it in there and you go rephrase. Okay. So what's the takeaway from that? Number one, you gotta be careful not to just copy and paste stuff right now, particularly when you're using and, and so doing essays in university or writing cover letters, because hiring managers will see that pretty quickly. And also when you're answering interviews, you don't want to necessarily be reading the ideal response, right? Because ultimately what these systems are looking for is real world responses, which is conversational, using your natural language, being human in the way that you're answering the questions. Okay, so those are some of the use cases on the job seeker side. Now on the hiring manager recruiting side, which is what our platform does, we offer things like workflow automation. We offer scoring of interviews, so natural language understanding, natural language processing, sentiment analysis, transcript generation, speech recognition, speech-to-text transcription. All of this is part of the flow that takes a video into an audio, into a transcription, into a speech recognition through an algorithm that analyzes for natural language understanding, identifies the phrases in your conversational language response, and then identifies the competencies that exist in that response and will generate a score. So that's a big part of what you're starting to see now if you're responding to interviews using asynchronous. Has anyone done an asynchronous video interview before, a one-way interview? Yeah. So that's becoming a very popular format, which is basically a video questionnaire where you get it, you respond to it in 6 minutes, in addition to live interview as well. So there's a lot of different AI use cases at play in our overall flow from a recruiter standpoint. Why is that? Well, a couple of things. One, believe it or not, reduction of bias. To have a data supported or blind data backend to support human decision making, because there's a lot of bias and subjectivity that exists in recruiter decision making. It's also for efficiency and improving the pace of the workflow in terms of time to hire, and creating fairness for the candidate in terms of a standardized workflow. So those are just a few examples.
Sure. Also, what about you, the tools you want to use?
So, one of the areas where I see AI being used primarily is in the field of medicine. So we're talking, one of the engagements that I worked on recently, we were talking about personalized medicine. Can you gather enough information about people's vitals? Can you gather their family history? Can you look at their genetic markers? And be able to predict things that will happen in the future. And I think that's one of the big breakthroughs that will happen with AI is this field of personalized medicine. And I've worked with a number of companies around this, and especially during COVID, a lot of different topics came up about how we're going to pursue healthcare in the future. And we see governments also dealing with the increased demand of healthcare services. I think where this is going to go is more virtualization, more automation, more AI. That's probably going to be the biggest positive use of AI that we're going to see. Any doctors versus healthcare workers here? Yes, is it coming up?
Yeah, like AI stuff, it's not really yet.
Right.
I think they're still trying to figure out like getting software like quick to systems.
Are you still competing with Dr. Google?
We're still
Okay, another doctor's coming.
And that's a good nice thing on our next question, which is, which industry do you anticipate will experience the most significant impact of AI over the next decade?
I think medicine. I do agree with medicine. I think IBM Watson is running like a lot of tests right now with medical providers to like match people's their personalized health history, and taking that and looking at a sample size of everybody that might have also gone through a similar history in terms of what they suffered. Even like looking at your genetic and ancestral tree and being able to give you a personalized treatment plan that you can act on right away. So I do like medicine. I think manufacturing, obviously, that's obviously another big industry where AI will likely play a big role. And then even the creative arts, right, like music and film and everything like that, which I'm actually very happy with. Because even when the whole Drake song came out, and a lot of my friends that are music managers were like kind of pissed about it, and I'm like, it almost felt like they were mad in the same way that ISP and EVM became popular, and you had like Martin Garrix creating every sound through presets on Logic Pro or on, using literally his laptop to produce sounds that you previously needed an instrument for 30, 40 years ago. It kind of felt like the next evolution there. And one thing people don't give credit, by the way, for the Drake song is the guy actually wrote the lyrics. And I thought the lyrics were fire. So that's what I like the most. The lyrics were not artificially generated, those came from the heart. But it's still pretty cool to see that like you can spin up something like that so quickly and get a lot of buzz around it. People genuinely did listen.
Oh, wow. So we were just chatting about fraud detection. That's a big one, right, in the insurance and financial markets. Proctoring of any scenario in terms of lie detection, for example. I see things like real estate, other flows where you have financial advisors even, right? We're already starting to see some remediation in those kinds of industries where you have advisors here, you have great platforms and automations, other things like procurement and contract generation. Those are all, if you think about anything that is a workflow where you can apply, or has repetitive, learnable actions where you can apply automation and you don't need human intervention, you've got a really good use case for AI.
I think a lot of people aren't really taking the time to understand all the different applications. If you just take the time to look at all the information you use in your business, your life, your career, it's actually amazing. But that said, that goes to the next question, which is, what are the risks of using something like ChatGPT, which is like awesome and everything. ChatGPT goes all the time. What are the risks of using this, and what should we look out for?
Okay, so many. This just came out right in November, and we all went, ooh. Sometimes you go on ChatGPT and you can't even get access because it's down, right? Okay, so first of all, copyright infringement, IP issues, sharing personally identifiable data. So those are things you want to look at for. You may have read the article about Samsung, who was putting their own code IP into, and once it's in there, because why this is free, right? Because they want us to help them build the next model, right? So every single piece of data we put in there, every single question, every single thing is helping them to learn, because to learn model. So that's what we need to be looking out for. So you don't want to do things like put any of your personally identifiable data in there, right? So let's just say you want to copy and paste and put your resume in there. Don't put your phone number, don't put your name, don't put your address. You shouldn't put your address on your resume anyways, by the way. Or your email, anything like that. That's obvious. If you've written a book or an essay, not a great idea if it's your own personal works, to put your content into ChatGPT for analysis. Because once it's in there, it's their data, right? There's no protection of your original content once it's in there. So those are some technical things. On the bigger picture, I worry about things like equality, access, university students, brain expansion and growth. If we start relying so heavily on these ChatGPT consumer AI models, where is learning going, right? Like where are we going to, we were just talking about that again, but where is our critical thinking? When is our brain going to get exercised? What are we going to take away from our education? Because we're already seeing the erosion of university education because of the emergence of these new online education models. So that's the kind of thing that worries me.
All right, as far as what I think of the risks, I think that ChatGPT and these kinds of technologies, the big risk that worries me is its use by organized crime. And so if you've ever been a victim of a fraud, if you've ever had someone hack into your account, if you've ever been a victim of a social engineer, and you wonder, how did they know so much? How did, there's someone that I know who, they were talking to someone on a platform, I think it was on Facebook, and a relative of mine. They're talking to somebody else, and they're having a conversation, but it's a hacker on the other end. And the hacker had figured out a bunch of things about their lives and was asking all kinds of very personal questions, and they're having a personalized discussion that went on for some time. Now, if I think about those tools being multiplied, those tools being easy access, and the scale at which professionals could work, that keeps me up at night. But I also think that with the risk, I think we're also going to change. Our own habits are going to change. We're going to have to, I was thinking about this, but what am I going to do? It's like you're going to have what, code words when you're talking to people and stuff. It's like the risk is there. It's something that we're going to evolve through and we'll adapt to it, but there's no choice but to. Maybe the security on the devices, maybe security protocols will be different. I'm not exactly sure, but it's definitely a problem that we need to address, and we will, right? But for the time being, when you hear about things like people calling voices, I saw a video demonstration about how they could, how some of the new protocols around video compression could be using basically avatars that we have avatars that are the basis of the video compression. And so, yeah, it's totally stable how that can be misused. So that's what keeps me up at night. I think that's one of the basis.
Yeah, just one quick thing to add. I mean, I would agree largely with what both of them just said. I would say one thing though, and I think Catherine, you pointed this out, I think the one fear around, like, what are people going to learn if, like, ChatGPT does everything for us? I do think there's also the argument of, like, at least the most meaningful stuff is where kids can focus a lot of their time on, and some of the basic stuff that, generally speaking, in the past, when I think that same feedback was given when Google came out, or when YouTube courses came out, right? Like, so many people were like, well, why would people go to college if I can just go onto Udemy now or go onto YouTube? But I would actually argue that, candidly, those tools help with access to the form. Like, the fact that every kid doesn't have to now go to college, but they can actually potentially afford a course. They can go on to masterclass. They could go and potentially get a lot of basic answers, at least from a ChatGPT. That, I think, is actually helpful when it comes to, like, the overall conversation about equality and building a society where everybody should have that access to some sort of learning. But I do still think that if you use ChatGPT here, like, some of the answers it gives you is great. And again, the model is only going to get smarter and smarter. But, like, there is a lot of things that you have to feed the model in order for it to come up with very good answers, right? Like, it's not just simply putting a question in. It comes down to, like, context. It comes down to how concise you are. Sometimes you have to feed an example. Sometimes you honestly just have to experiment and try different variations. Like, the entire concept of prompt engineering could honestly become a career. And it actually already has. But, like, it might actually become a more mainstream career going forward. Like, I was literally at Upwork and I saw someone say prompt engineer, and I'm like, what? Like, $50 an hour? What the hell? This is crazy. But it honestly could be, right? So I genuinely think that when our minds don't have to necessarily worry about a lot of the basic stuff that needs to learn and can actually leverage ChatGPT for some of that stuff, it does free up the human mind to be able to focus on potentially bigger questions or things that are a little bit harder to challenge, kids, especially at a younger age growing up. Hope that kind of makes sense, but again, a little bit random. Not a good prompt for ChatGPT.
Let me add something. So I think what it does is it actually prompts us to think about what value you produce, right? So if all the answers are there, and think about a time when, your past life where you said, hey, I wonder what's the biggest building in the world? I wonder what the fastest animal is, or whatever. Very good. He's a supercomputer. So I didn't say it. No, but there was times when you wondered things. You'd ask him, like, hey, do you know what this is? Do you know who's got the record for that? It's like, now everything's available on Google. And now, with ChatGPT, it's like, okay, how do I construct this? What's a model for that? What's a template for this? And it actually forces you to think faster, right? And I wouldn't say that it replaces humans, because that's the model it sort of is Google and Google, but I think it lends itself possibly for us to be working towards a higher purpose.
Okay, I want to pick up on prompt engineering. So definitely, it's the new job. So if you're looking for something to learn, this is it. So prompt engineering basically means knowing how to ask ChatGPT or an AI model questions so you get the best quality result, right? So there are, if you go to OpenAI and you just go into the prompt library, you can get a lot of really good data there, just right there. But I just wanted to give you a framework, right? Just an example of what prompt engineering actually is and how to ask questions back to ChatGPT. And by the way, ChatGPT is just one, there's others. But, so prompt engineering. So let's say you're looking for a job. So the first question you ask is, what are the 5 most popular interview questions for a first stage interview? Okay. That's a reasonable question, right? That's super broad, right? Okay, next, you need to bring it down a level. You need to tell them more about you. So, who are you? What's your demographic? What's the archetype? So now you say, okay, I'm a data scientist. This is my second job, and I am interviewing with Deloitte, and what would be the most likely questions that I would receive in a first stage interview. So now you see, you told them who you are, what the job is, and what the company is. So this is the cool part, is now it can literally tell you, this is the value of a ChatGPT, what questions Deloitte is asking to data scientists in second stage interviews. So that's prompt engineering. There's layers of context and detail in the questions you need to prompt it with in order to get high quality results. However, if you don't know anything about prompt engineering, here's a little trick. You can just say to ChatGPT, what are the questions that I need to ask you in order to get the best quality result? And it'll actually tell you. It'll say, well, you need to tell me these things. And then you tell them. So you can talk to ChatGPT and it'll tell you about the holes you need to fill in the details in order to get the details that you want. So it is also a dialogue. So if you don't have perfection in your prompts, there's lots of ways to get that figured out. But prompt engineering is going to become a class of job. No question about it.
Maybe one other fear I do have, and this is really shared here, but personal relationships. I think everyone's maybe seen the news recently of there was a marriage that was filed in LA, obviously it's LA, where the guy wanted to marry their AI companion. There's several AI companion startups now that are raising tremendous amounts of money. One of them is called Spark, or Y-Combinator, and it's genuinely terrifying because of also what Austin said, where it's not even just the avatar, which looks like a weak character sometimes, but it's not just the avatar, it's the fact that you can modulate their voice. Modulate even the way they talk to you. And a lot of the people that use these sort of AI companions, they feel like they're finally heard, which is actually a really nice thing when you think about it. But it's also a bit of a scary thing in the fact of what if you become so addicted to talking to someone or something that understands you fully every time you feed data into it, it never forgets. It doesn't forget your birthday, it remembers literally everything. It's a bit terrifying to think about how humans start to connect with one another in a more physical environment. What's that love You'll have to talk about it.
There's a movie called Her, which is this whole thing. Exactly that.
You gave one of the 10 answers already.
And I like that your conversation about the prompts, I could be like, dear ChatGPT, tell me everything about 𝐋𝐢𝐧𝐤𝐞𝐝.
Yeah.
It's like how can you make my best friend so I don't drive to the airport whenever I need it. And it probably comes as an amazing thing. I want to see if people, I have other questions for the panel. If they have a question they want to ask anybody, I've got hand in the back, Go ahead. Stand up, please. Nice and loud.
So my question is, you talk about this song that was composed partially by the AI, the song with The Weeknd and Drake. So my question is, what's the legal framework for intellectual property? Because, for example, let's say the AI say you have this song and it has so many streams and so many royalties. So I want to share from that, either, I don't know if it's by the developers of ChatGPT or to say that ChatGPT, I know there are many of them. And the other question related to that, I think Catherine talk about it a little bit. So she said, don't put any original ideas because they're put there. So in some way, like if you want to use leverage of the AI, but is there any protection for my idea, or as long as I put it inside the ChatGPT, it's no longer mine?
Do I go first, Evan?
Sorry, I didn't want to scare you, that's very the original content piece. So like, if you did do that, the likelihood of somebody stealing that content is so small because it's not like it's replicatable or findable. Because in order for someone to retrieve that piece of content, they would have to have the exact scenario that they would be looking for and the right prompts and everything else. So if you put stuff in, I don't want to put the fear out there that, oh my gosh, but generally speaking, as generative AI, you want to be using it to generate content for you as opposed to putting stuff in to it, if you know what I mean. So, so yes, technically, if you put data in, it's theirs. They own it. But it doesn't mean that you don't own it as well. But they could technically say, this is data that you provided to us in this data exchange, and that's how it works. But I wouldn't worry too much about it.
On the music front, the song was called Part of the Sleep, the Drake and Weeknd song, and it was on Spotify for 2 weeks, and it got taken down, which I was really sad about. But at the same time, it's still on YouTube. And the cool thing about it is the reason it's allowed to stay up is because the lyrics are original, and the sound is actually original as well, despite it sounding like Drake. And if we don't think about it, it's actually accurate because, one, right now, if you wanted to, you could go into a studio and almost try to replicate the Weeknd sound, for example. Right? Like, you could auto-tune yourself in a particular way. You wouldn't come out sounding like a Weeknd because he's a god, but it's, you know, what did I say that? Jesus Christ. But you can auto-tune yourself. You can also sample music, which is very much something that the music industry has had to deal with for the last 10 years, sampling sounds and obviously crediting wherever you can because that's important to do, which is what the YouTube video also does, is it credits the original artist that they kind of sampled their sound from. The business idea that I wrote down, which if I wasn't working on Surf, I would definitely look at, and I'm just going to share it, but I think it's actually a decent idea, is what if you were to build a Spotify for AI music, where you do have the royalties going back to the original artist? Because the problem is that if you heard the Drake Weeknd song, Drake sounded incredible in the chorus, and then the verse was like terrible. Like it did not sound like Drake that much. The chorus was great, the verse not so good. But I bet if Drake was constantly feeding that model, it would be closer and closer to his real voice. And that would be really cool. Like if an artist, for example, along with making money from touring and selling albums, could also continuously release music that trains the model, wherein then other people can make sounds incorporating their voice and they get a royalty from it. And every song maybe has an asterisk on it so people know it's not actually Drake. That could be kind of an interesting model to even put more money into artists' pockets. So I don't know, just food for thought maybe for that idea, but my 2 cents.
Question, go ahead.
Yeah, please. Oh, hi. Catherine, we touched on AI being used for interview scores, and that's good because it's data-driven. As you said, it does remove bias, but because it's so data-driven, is there a concern that like real world, you know what I mean, like discretion, critical thinking from managers might be a little bit removed? And the other part of my question is sometimes it interprets languages and answers and stuff like that. So we live in a very diverse community, and there are people with different dialects, different accents. So I'm sure there's, you know, a little bit of work to do. I just want to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I got the question. So that's a very, very common question that we get, and a very, very important one. So it really goes to how the model works and whether there's bias or discrimination applied. So let me tell you how it's procured first. So the underlying goal of this is to create a standardized workflow and to reduce bias in human decision making. So, for example, the customers that use our platform, they have a choice. They could use AI on its own for automated decision. That's 10% of our customers. Most of them choose to use AI with what we call blind AI, which runs in the background. And so it's human decision making, collaboratively, transparently across the hiring team. Then the AI runs in the background, and if there's a variance of 20% or more, it'll flag. And it'll just say, hey, AI here, we ran our score, and it's a little different from yours. And then they go, oh, okay, I have a choice of whether I want to look at the AI score or not. So it's a data-supported model. So also there's customers who use our platform and they don't use AI at all. So they just use, they look at the audio and video responses and they do their own scoring, the scoring models and everything else. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that the way that the model is trained is based on three years and millions of data points and pieces of data. The root of a natural language understanding model is what's called a snippet. A snippet at its root is three words. And so the model understands multiple languages and multiple dialects, but so in the training of the model, you start with ground truth, and then you put together a team of annotators from all backgrounds. So your annotators have to come from a wide and diverse backgrounds, languages, and they actually annotate the data. People annotate the data, and then it's supervised. And so you get different languages, you get different dialects. So the root of a phrase is a snippet, which is 3 words, which can be presented in any order, right? So the minimum root language is actually 3 words within a phrase. And so there's a lot of scrutiny in the development of a language model and ours went through Verizon as our biggest customer, just to give you an example. We had to go through Verizon's legal team over the course of 1 year to specifically on accessibility point that you're asking right now. So it's very, very, in terms of the building of a ground-up, ground-truth model, it's all about how that model is trained. And one other thing I just want to mention about that is we're talking a lot about ChatGPT, and that is a learning model. Okay, but there are other models. So our model, for example, is not learning. So basically the way it works is you build a model and then you supervise it. You have different thresholds that you have to meet in terms of F1 scores, precision, accuracy. And once it's approved, it's deployed into the live environment, but then it's rules-based. It doesn't learn. And that's how, so in our model, for example, there's no personally identifiable data, it's impossible, there's no pronoun data, there's no gender, there's no names, there's no demographics, it's just language responses to questions, right? So there's some very specific protocols that we took in the training of that model to be able to identify conversational responses. But all of those questions that you're asking probably goes to one of your next questions around ways to protect yourself and things that you should be looking for in disclosures before you enter an interview and other forms to know what type of model you're looking for.
There's lots of questions, so I think I will just put this away and you guys can ask your questions. So, this gentleman has oh, sorry, there's a question already, sorry. Remy has a mic, so she'll pass it. Go ahead. And also make sure your mic is close to your mouth so the voice travels.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, for the panelists that have employees, I'm wondering if you institute any policies related to AI and ChatGPT usage by employees, or maybe risk or exposure not only to them, but for the company and the clients.
Yeah, we actually bought a ChatGPT plan for every one of our employees. So we're very open to allowing people to use it. I will say one thing, I do agree with just being cautious, right? So a lot of what the other panelists have talked about today is literally a 1-pager that we sent out to each employee. Just keep in mind you don't want to share certain information in ChatGPT. But at the end of the day, I will have to say this, it is hilarious to me that the amount of scrutiny ChatGPT gets over ingested data, and if people go and Google people go and they put stuff on like Facebook and are thinking like, I am totally safe. There is nobody tracking this data whatsoever. Like, it is so weird. So, I don't know, at least being in the data industry, I've kind of come to realize that 99% of people don't actually think about personal data every morning, which saddens me to my core. But I also know that if you are a company, it is far better to obviously, take preventative measures, provide education, give the simplest amount of information you can, one-pagers, not five-page documents, be able to educate employees, especially on, hey, this is what you actually should do, this is what you shouldn't do. Because again, if it ever does come back to bite you, you're covered from that front, and that's what we're really trying to do.
And the sad part too is that there are some companies struggling with social media policy. Like, where the hell have you been with us? Like, 20 years, man. Get to it.
So to answer your question, I have a small boutique consulting company, and so we're using AI tools, but we use it mostly for research, and so it's part of our everyday usage now. What's interesting is, we're developing, the technology is new, the way of thinking of it as a business tool is new. So we have to catch ourselves a few times. So for example, we're doing research about it in industry. And when I'm doing my research, it's mostly about thinking about models, business models, industry models, and then trying to figure out how technology could be applied. So as I'm asking the questions about the industry and the company, one of the prompt techniques that I originally used was to describe the company in the first person. I'm the CEO of such and such company. This is what I do. This is how I monetize. These are my types of customers. And early on, I found myself taking a shortcut and said, this is my website. And so scan my website, see what else I do, and summarize it back to me. Now this is all in the chat. So now some AI has identified my customer and there's all the questions that I'm asking about my customer. That doesn't happen anymore because now we've introduced a policy around that. So I think you have to be really careful about not just plagiarism like what we discussed before, but also the questions that you ask, make sure that you're not specifically identifying. I think that's important. But we find it a very valuable tool because you have to know a lot of things about a lot of things. And so the alternative is hiring a full research team. And as a boutique company, it's just not feasible. So it's a valuable tool for us.
But
Alright, hi. Thanks for making this happen. It's been a really interesting conversation. I have a two-part question as well. So, on the part of risk, on the topic of risk, I know earlier this year, a bunch of very well-known people have signed a letter so that we can delay the entire ChatGPT for 6 months, including OpenAI CEO as well. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on, is it happening too fast? Like, can we keep up with the speed as well as the regulatory oversight we need to make sure everything is done properly? And then the second part is also in terms of how we're working with this tech. Is wondering for smaller entrepreneurs, other than learning about prompt engineering, what are some other thoughts you have in terms of how we can go about really leveraging this technology as a tool to help carry out whatever we want to carry out?
What was the first question? Okay, I'll go first. All right. I'm going to go to your second question. Right? In terms of what you do as an entrepreneur, I think the basic fundamentals still apply. Right? The fundamentals are, it's about understanding your customers, understanding your monetization of your business. So really using as an entrepreneur in the general sense, it's still building your business case, building your foundation. And then the second thing in terms of building your business is, if your business is AI-based or technology-based, right, then leveraging the data and the tools that are available through the AI in order to help you build your business model. And And what I do is I help entrepreneurs every day, day in and day out, to build their business cases and to use the technology. If you want to have a chat, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think the two things. One, I remember seeing Sam Altman from OpenAI speak on the LIVESTREAM podcast, and he came on like a month and a half ago, and he mentioned the idea of like OpenAI potentially not coming out with another GPT model for about 6-7 months. One other thing he did also mention, by the way, is trying to put together a committee within Silicon Valley for around 10 to 12 CEOs that would meet on a regular basis in order to chat about the direction where AI is going. Because keep in mind, like, when it comes to a lot of these moves that are happening in AI, it's candidly not being dictated right now by like 50,000 companies. It's really being dictated by a handful of companies that are really shaping the future of what AI is looking at right now. Obviously, within industries, they tend to all use the same framework. So you kind of go back to the root and you look at the OpenAIs of the world, and you look at the IBMs of the world. I mean, these are the companies truly shaping the future of AI. To have those people in a room at least once a month to chat about the implications of the technology they're releasing would be beneficial, in my opinion. Is it, however, if you look at history, what typically has always led to the benefit of society? Up to you guys. I don't have a opinion on that. I'm going to change it again. Like again, back to my field, data and privacy. Like there's still no federal regulation here in Canada that's like GDPR. It's still in the House of Commons, Bill C-27. In the United States, you have California only has CCPA, the only privacy act that is at a state level within the United States. Why is GDPR in today's world, where you need to let people request their data, download their data, and delete their data, not a universal standard, or at least not a standard across Canada and the United States? So I do think, candidly, it comes down to incentives, and when corporate incentives tend to take over, you see a delay in terms of what typically is the right thing to do. And take that delay and couple it with governments and how they tend to operate and act and understand trends, and you have a bit of a mess there. So, not to be a pessimist, but I do believe that it's a multitude of different factors that will likely determine how quickly we're able to actually be responsible with AI and generally the implications of it going forward. On the second question, I also don't think every business needs to incorporate AI. Like, I know there's this mad rush across companies, especially in the startup world, to just add the word AI to their deck because they're like, investors are gonna love this. But again, like, I think the best example of a company that actually retroactively went in and was like, we're gonna actually incorporate AI was Ada. Ada here in Toronto, I think did it brilliantly, right? You're a customer service company, you have millions upon millions upon millions of queries coming through your system. You have typically the same types of queries being made. There is a way to incorporate AI where you can potentially lower your costs overall from a headcount perspective. I don't know, again, you can leave the ethics discussion aside, just from a pure numbers perspective, it does benefit the business. And B, there's probably a best outcome in terms of consumers being able to get a much faster experience when it comes to getting the hardest hitting questions answered way faster. So like customer service business is 100%, but like, I don't know, there are a lot of brick and mortar businesses that are like, they're talking about AI, trying to figure it out, when it's like, get the fundamentals down first, build the company up to a certain scale, and if you ever do need to incorporate it in the future, i.e. you do have hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of data points that you're likely trying to sentence through quicker for the benefit of your customer, then look at AI. There's no reason to start off looking at it from ground zero, if that makes sense.
And also talk about the second point. One of the things that I see when I'm talking to entrepreneurs or established businesses, one of the biggest risks to their businesses right now is, anyone want to guess? I'll give you that. That's something to do with this right here. It has to do with retention, right? Retention is the biggest risk. So if the risk of losing your key employees is so big, then what you begin to do is create workflows and automations and AI and decision trees, right? So that should an employee leave, that those processes that you've established in technology guide the next person who comes into the seat, or maybe they're less experienced, so that those tools and technologies can help bridge that gap.
Yeah, and as a small business owner, for small business owners in the room, there's a few things that I would recommend. So I think we touched on customer service. Okay, so so your front end, everybody struggles with this. Sales, customer inquiries, info ads, get in touch, contact me. So there's a really good use case for using a bot right out of your website. And what it can do is it can automate just basic inquiries that you can train it to do, very simple. And then you can basically have it say, schedule a time with a team member, or do you want to see a video demo, and you give it 3 different options. And so that helps you to reduce your headcount in terms of managing that front-end flow of lead generation to conversion. And it also can just literally trigger a workflow automation that would send a video demo to that customer to watch, and then you can further qualify that customer before you put time into putting a salesperson on that particular call. So I think like a lot of people should look at chatbot, and you can go to IBM and you can use Watson Assistant, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You can actually get a free trial and maybe use it for a year before you even have to start paying. And it's based on the number of interactions that that assistant has. And you can even brand it as a free trial. So that's a really good thing to try because there's a lot that happens at the front end of your business that you can automate. So the second piece is there's a lot of different AI tools that do workflow automation. So you could do, like maybe some kind of sales drip flow automation where you're using, Salesforce or MailChimp or Zapier. You can go do this and do this and do this and do this and do this. Automate that whole thing, and you don't even need employees to do that. So workflow automation can be really huge for your business. There's others AI tools that are really cool, like text to voice for videos. For those people, we focus a lot on diversity, and a lot of our clients need diversity in voices. Diversity, we usually don't use faces now. So generating different voice-based videos that are of different backgrounds, for example, that's really cool. There's other tools, and I'm happy to give you guys a list of these things, but another one is AI-generated PowerPoint presentations or websites. I mean, literally, you can put a few things in, and it'll put together like absolutely beautiful PowerPoint templates that are generating imagery that you want and even baseline websites. So those things are like for starting up and getting going and dealing with those first stages. I think those are really valuable tools. On this first question, I would say, I think you talked about so he basically said, the father of AI said that he believes that what he originally thought was going to happen in 20 years is now going to happen in 5. Very scary concept, right? And I think the question is, if he doesn't really know what the answer is, any kind of, group of individuals, no matter how smart they are not necessarily going to be able to control the pace of the growth of AI because it's now a living and learning beast, if you will. So yes, you can shut it down, but there's other models and that kind of thing. So certainly something to think about, careers and skill sets, and I think this might be one of the questions in terms of being like what makes you unique and what career will you have going forward that makes sense in this new world. But also this point about sentient, right? I mean, we've seen sentient AI, and we've heard it come from Google, which is sentient basically means when AI takes on human emotions. And there's been evidence at Google and a few other places that have really stress tested AI that there are, this AI can generate, some AI models can now, or apparently can now demonstrate feelings. Emotions versus feelings, emotions. And this is really interesting stuff to track because that's a big fear, right? Is if you can transcend, what is just learning from facts into being able to use logic to, or feelings, I guess, to evoke. So I just throw that out there because I'm sure there's someone in the room who might ask a question about sentient models.
All right, I think we have to stop the questions now because we want to be sure there's time for the Q&A session and a little bit of the icebreaker break. So, but again, the speakers right here, you can come, you can with them, talk to them afterwards, ask your questions. You can certainly follow the link here on Instagram and ask us questions as well. But we want to do the competition. You certainly stay. We're the event goes on. It's a networking. There's time to talk to each other. By all these issues. So I want to thank Fisher Swami, Austin Khan, CATHARINE FENNEL. Give a big warm round of applause for CATHARINE. So before we get to the full message, honestly, I just want to do a really, really quick icebreaker because I think everyone's been sitting for about an hour. So if everyone stand up, please, and form a quick group of 3 to 4 people around your chairs, okay? Find the 2 or 3 people at the top here. I want to answer this question. First, introduce yourself, and then share with each other your favorite AI sci-fi movie. Discuss. The online session at Coach Explain is a chance for you to share your results. You can pitch your product, you can share a nugget of wisdom, you can ask a question and have them maybe see you afterwards, you can ask for a job. But basically, it's a chance for you to share whatever you want to talk about. And we only have 15 or 30 seconds. Okay? So we love the online session because often people share some really wonderful ideas or stories, or you find some really interesting people in the city. That's why this is really why I call LinkedIn local, because the whole idea is taking what we do online and LinkedIn, bring it live here in person. That's really what it's about. So with that, if anyone come up on the mic is yours, then come up and go ahead. Go ahead. Can you guys hear me? Test.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Nav, aka Mr. Metaverse. That's how you remember me. I am in the Metaverse space. My company is Charmy, CHAARMI.com. We actually integrate ChatGPT. We built a WordPress Metaverse house creation. I've got a fun tip for you guys if you're using ChatGPT daily, like we are. If you ever get that message that says, sorry, it doesn't connect, check if you've got a VPN. Turn it off and it'll work. All right? Save me a whole bunch of hours. So that's a little bit about me, and I look forward to meeting all of you.
And other people want to line up, you can over there on the side, and I'll see you there.
All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you for allowing me to 30 seconds as well. My name is 𝐂𝐲𝐬. I'm founder of Resume Canada. I started a resume writing firm in 2020. And so I help people identify their unique skills, identify their accomplishments, and to put their best foot forward. And I also work on other writing services for proposals and brand letters. So just check out resumecanada.ca. That's resumecanada.ca. Should be easy enough.
Hello, my name's David. I talk to myself, but 3 by 3 would not itself. No, I'm not crazy. I'm a professional voice actor. So if you're producing any content, audio, video, training, and you need a comforting voice, talk to me. Oh, also a selfie thing.
Thank you.
Thank you for an amazing presentation. My name is Laura Scarlett Martin, and I am starting a venture capital fund, London Ventures, to support fintech and proptech startups that are run by underrepresented and underestimated founders. So if anyone's interested in talking to me about your startup, I would love to hear it. If you're interested in investing, let's talk to you. Also, I'm going to share a quick LinkedIn tip. I have 30,000 LinkedIn connections, and I need you to understand LinkedIn is the absolute best social media platform to promote yourself in. You can literally just connect with 100 people a week, like clockwork, and have an open line of communication with those people. Also, be able to search by job type. You can't do that on any other platform. Get busy, get to work, you can get to 30,000.
Thanks so much for that. And I want to talk about something before we put other people, okay, which is, I do want to talk about briefly what BYTV is. So BYTV is a personal brand organization that helps with personal branding, leadership development, and personal development. And helps you find purpose and clarity in focus in your life. And so we run events, we run events, we run workshops, we do conferences, we run local events, and of course we believe that people need more focus, clarity, and alignment in their life. That's what personal branding is about. We have a model that we need to help people figure this stuff out. And I want to mention that, if you want to join our team, we actually would love to have people on our team. Now, part of to help with these events. So if you want to be part of these events and help out, we encourage help because even right now, at the end of this thing, we actually have to, we didn't have our volunteers to help us set up, so it took a long set up. But if somebody wanted to help and stay afterwards and help us put the tournament and go back, we'd appreciate it. If you want to help us organize future events, we'll do one in July, and October, and December. We do usually 5 per year. We'd love to have your help. So reach out to me, talk to me after this for that. The other thing I want to mention is that I'm also part of an organization called the College of Writing Club, which is basically designed to help organizations, particularly brands and business owners, elevate their thought leadership. So we have weekly calls, we have weekly meeting trainings, we have mindset calls, we have a private LinkedIn group or private website where we share knowledge, we share articles, we ask questions. And the goal is to help you build your brand. So if you're interested in being part of that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. We have weekly Zoom calls where you can be a guest. Come check it out and learn what it's all about. And actually, on that note, I'm running a free workshop next week on how to build your thought leadership and leadership within itself. If you want to mention that, let's get the next speaker up here. Everyone in the back, please. Everyone back, please. Really quiet so we can do the speaker. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Green. I'm a LinkedIn learning author. I've published over 30 courses on LinkedIn learning. I've also just finished my 21st, my 23rd book. And I'm also published a course on media. I sort of show up at these things because everybody's here on LinkedIn, but there's another path to this, which is LinkedIn learning. And you want to get involved in LinkedIn learning, but don't want to be in a place where it's going to be secret. Toronto Public Library will give you a free card. All you got to do is put LinkedIn learning, your library card number, and you're in. And if you're a student, please see if you don't take advantage of it. So thanks for that.
We're going to bring guys in the back. It's really hard to hear, so make sure kind of people keep down the bottom here, and also keep very closely to the mic so we're hear you. Thank you.
Can anyone hear me? Hi everyone, my name is Wadka. I'm the founder of Creativity Times TEDx and I'm one of the youngest board of directors as well for the few nonprofits. I also work as a human capital consultant at Deloitte. And I think that I would share that everyone here, especially for LinkedIn networking, is a great way to start is this event. If you are someone who's not active on LinkedIn, take a picture with any random person you want on the event or on the speakers, tag every single person you know. That's how I started on LinkedIn, and now I'm around 20,000 followers on LinkedIn as well in a matter of 6 months. So, it's all about starting with one event, and it's upwards from there.